Peace and love. Welcome to the Eat Fresh Veggies Podcast, episode 3. I just want to give a huge shout out to my supporters and people who have supported the podcast. I've had some old friends come through and, shout out, you know who you are, who have really helped me and helped support the podcast. I'm truly grateful for everyone who has came through and just wished well and has listened. Please go and check out episode 1 and episode 2, and I hope you enjoy episode 3. All support is appreciated, so if you will check out the links in my description below, you can help support me on PayPal and on GoFundMe. I'm really trying to save up to get some new equipment, some more sound equipment and video editing, so I can help produce for you more high quality content. So if you are interested in supporting the Eat Fresh Veggies podcast, check out the links below, and of course subscribe, like, and share this content. So today on the Eat Fresh Veggies Podcast, episode 3, we are going to be discussing healing Black women. We're going to be discussing Black women in the medical healthcare system. We're going to be discussing some of the habits that have been perpetuated in the Black women, in our Black female community, Black women's community, that is contributing to the detriment of our health. And then, of course, we're going to wrap it up with the ways that you, as a Black woman, can take your health into your own hands. So let's get started with part 1 in discussing Black women in the medical healthcare system. So the American healthcare system has a lengthy history of neglecting and experimentation on Black women. So this neglect, it made me think about a brother I saw. I guess he was talking to some legislative body, or he was in front of the Supreme Court or something. I don't know. The camera was only on him, and it was just a clip. But I'll actually see if I can find the clip and put it put a link for you to check it out. But he was talking about his now deceased wife, and how she had just had a child or just had a baby, and they were in the hospital, and she was starting to experience some severe pain and cramping and just all around just severe discomfort. So, they try to call the nurses and call the doctors and, find out what's going on. And he reported they were just like, oh, she's fine. She just had a baby, bleeding as usual, having some pain here and there is usual. It's typical, nothing to worry about. So this goes on for 12 hours. And it was a push. I mean, he was fighting for her. They were trying to get her to another hospital and, get her an ambulance so that they could take her to another hospital that would care for her. But the hospital didn't want to release her, and they weren't trying to cooperate with the family, and the hospitals weren't trying to cooperate. And I mean, this went on for 12 hours of her being in pain, severe pain. And after this 12 hours, she actually bled to death inside of her own body. She was bleeding to death. And instead of performing an ultrasound or putting the stethoscope and just, onto her area where she was feeling pain, probably in her lower stomach, abdominal area because she just had given birth, they were just like, she's fine, not a big deal. You're overreacting, she's really not in that much pain, here's some pain reliever and, call me in the morning. So she ended up passing away, and it was really a call to attention of the neglect that Black women experience in not only the Americanized healthcare system. That is a whole nother discussion. And we're going to be talking about the Americanized healthcare system on a global level. We got a whole nother podcast to talk about. That's a whole episode. But in this episode, we're just going to keep it in America. We're going to keep it in the collective. So the neglect of Black women in the Americanized healthcare system. I mean, we have our sisters who are in labor going to, white-owned institutions and who are saying, oh, you're not in labor. You're not in labor. You're not fully dilated. You're not in labor. You're overreacting, or, so on and so forth. Insert the excuse. And it really calls to action two things. It calls to action two things that have been severely perpetuated and stereotyped in our Americanized system about Black women is that A, we don't feel pain, or we don't feel as much pain, and two, Black women are overreacting. So this idea that Black women feel less pain stems from when our ancestors were forced into human trafficking and were brought here as slaves. Our sisters were being experimented on. Black women, Black female, well, to them, Black female slaves of Black women were being sold to so-called healthcare practitioners or leaders of science, or leaders of medicine, and or pioneers of medicine, and they were being experimented on. They weren't giving any pain reliever, no sedation. They were 100% fully conscious, and they would suffer from genital mutilation, genital experimentation, and this also included the experimentation on newborn babies who were born from pregnant Black women. So I don't know. I really truly cannot give you an answer of if that stems from Black women being seen as stronger or bigger because of our physique or our physical capacity or where we were living. I mean, coming from, and a lot of our ancestors here in America were brought over from West Africa. I mean, the blazing sun, plenty of fruits and vegetables. We just had the resources to grow bigger. To be honest with you, we had the resources to grow bigger. And a lot of us, farmed our own foods and took care of ourselves. So, we were able to work out too. I can't give you the answer as to why there is, and a continued presumption. Like, this even continues to 2020, but I can't give you an answer why, but I can only speculate that there is a severe neglect because there is an assumption that Black women feel less pain or they don't feel any pain at all. And there are some doctors, and I'm not saying all doctors, and even the really good doctors, because we have some phenomenal healthcare practitioners out there. None of this is shade on our healthcare practitioners. However, it is a call to attention that either on a conscious level, and those who are on a conscious level who truly believe that Black women don't feel pain are hopefully not working, who are no longer in business. But there's also a subconscious assumption that Black women don't feel pain. It's not always abrupt and outward and it's not always obtuse. Sometimes it is, well, you're helping this person, you're helping this patient, a Black woman patient, but after 400 plus years of systemic racism that has brainwashed everyone into thinking this, that, and a third about Black women, we still perpetuate a lot of that brainwashing. And evidently it trickles into our healthcare system of saying, well, Black women don't feel that much pain. They're big and strong and Black, and you know what I mean? Like, insert reason. They just don't feel that much pain. So therefore we can have a Black woman. I mean, she was successful. She already had, I think, 4 children. Like, she was very successful and happy to be in pain for 12 hours, bleeding internally, and not even having an ultrasound performed. And that leads to the second idea of why Black women are being neglected in our medical care system, especially when we're, vocalizing pain or discomfort, is because there's an assumption that Black women just have an attitude. And I said that with an attitude. There's like, oh, Black women are dramatic, or they're overreactive, or, we do too much, whatever. I defend that. I think we're just very expressive people, but that's just my opinion. That's just my fact. That's my truth. But this assumption kind of adds insult to injury that, well, they don't feel that much pain, and it's either that or they're just complaining or they're being loud and ignorant, and it's another reason to ignore and neglect legitimate healthcare concerns that our Black women are vocalizing. So it's a long history of experimentation, of neglect, and abuse. Some other stories that please feel free to check out is Henrietta Lacks, a black woman who was experimented on. She had it's you got to check it out. There's a movie on it. It's amazing. But Henrietta Lacks is another black woman in recent history. Maybe in I think she was in the 60s. I will even say in the early 70s, that was still going on. This is what we're talking, this neglect and abuse that we're talking about isn't unique to, 300 years ago. I mean, these things were happening in the 60s and 70s, and they happen today. We have black women that go to the hospital today that are in labor or are in severe pain and are not being adequately cared for, or are on a subconscious level still being subjected to systemic racism and the microaggressions that attach itself with it. So the roots of our medical care system are not rooted in the best interests of black people. Even some of the most well-meaning organizations that we've heard of, Planned Parenthood, Blue Cross and Blue Shield, Aetna, are some of the big name organizations that started out for the most part as for the people, as nonprofits. And especially Planned Parenthood, they do a lot of phenomenal work. No shade on Planned Parenthood. They do a lot of phenomenal work. However, I challenge if there is still some, systemic misconceptions about black women in the Planned Parenthood and in the overall practice of women's health that maybe we're still executing and we don't even realize that we're doing it, because as healthcare practitioners, there is a need to still challenge if you are still performing some of these microaggressions and neglect of black women, because at the end of the day, we all have to elevate and improve. So that's what I challenge. But anyway, hit me up in the comments if you don't agree, whatever. But so moving on to my second point. So when our ancestors were kidnapped and brought into human trafficking and transported to the Caribbean and America and all throughout the Central and Northern America, so much of our culture and education was torn away from us. And this education included healthcare. It included women's healthcare and how to properly protect and encourage a health in all stages of the women's health. Everything from the beginning of menstruation to pregnancy, birth, and then going on to menopause. There was so much knowledge that was gained, herbs, practices, spiritual acknowledgments, spiritual healing, as well as just attunement with our physical environment that was torn away from us. And we were thrusted into a system that in its very roots was based off of experimentation on our bodies, and has quote unquote evolved, and I use that word loosely, to cause our black women to have to rely on white institutions for our black healthcare, and especially our black women's healthcare. And even though, we have made a lot of leaps and bounds in educating ourselves and how to properly care for our black women bodies, we are still finding ourselves having to be subjected to white institutions that from its root weren't necessarily in our best interest, and still execute some of those systemic microaggressions, whether it be neglect or downplaying our pain, or just downplaying some of our concerns. Some of those things still vibrate deeply. All of them still vibrate deeply in our medical healthcare system. So, what are we doing as black women to make us over reliant on white institutions? And if we're going to be talking about gaining more control over our health and gaining more awareness of who we are in our systems and how to properly care for our reproductive system, we can therefore make better decisions of, do we have to go to the hospital for this, or is there a way that I can prevent it? And if I, end up suffering from, let's say, cramping or uncomfortable menstruations or overbleeding, what can I do so that I'm not always having to be dependent on white institutions? So the first answer is going to be look for a black doctor, preferably a black female doctor. And I'm going to even take it a step further and say, seek out black female dietitians, seek out black female herbalists and black female, a physical therapist. There's so much more to the medical care system than just going to a doctor, and depending on the type of doctor that you have, is probably going to be more tentative to write you a prescription for chemicalized drugs, or they're going to write you a prescription. That's kind of what part of what they learned in medical school. So there are so many more vacuums of health other than just your standard, family doctor. Please check out female herbalists, check out female, there's a plethora, especially black female dietitians. And that's kind of where I'm going to push, is gain a complete control of your health. Don't just go to the doctor when you start to feel bad. If you have the means, look for preventative measures and preventative healthcare practitioners who can help form a better lifestyle for you, so that you're not just going to the doctor when you start to feel sick, or you start to ultimately find yourself in an urgent medical situation. So that's going to be my first answer, is, seek out various types of healthcare practitioners instead of always just being reliant on these same, white-owned institutions. And the second thing that, kind of whittling it down into just overall taking more control of our bodies, taking more control of our health. It's not just about what we're eating. It's about regaining ownership of our existence as Black women currently living in America. And I'm going to say it to my sisters, some of what I'm about to say ain't going to sit easy with you, because everything I said up to this point has been, at least in our community, well-known knowledge. Everything up until this point has been well-known knowledge. But from this point, some of the things I'm going to say are going to make you uncomfortable. So I guess I'm just putting a trigger warning out there for you. But I'm just speaking to you, and I'm going to keep it real with you, because we got our sisters out here dying with neglect and abuse, or just overall not taking proper care of ourselves and finding ourselves in urgent medical situations. And ultimately, sometimes it's just too late, and we can't be helped. Whether it's in the form of cervical cancer, or, having to get, crucial reproductive organs removed in order to prevent our, death or severe medical disabilities. We're having to take care of your body when it's whispering, because you don't want to hear it when it screams. That is my saying. Write it down and share it. So I'm about to rap to you real quick. Some of the foods that are consumed by Black women are aiding to a lot of our reproductive issues, whether it's in the form of cervical cancer, uterine cancer, ovarian cancer. We are consuming foods that are contributing to our death, to be honest with you. And we need to be taking better care of our health. So I'll just, there's even some women that suffer from, having cysts on their ovaries, or having cysts on a reproductive organ, or having or suffering from fibroids. So some foods like red meat, like beef, steak, lamb, pork, a lot of these foods have detrimental effects on our female reproductive system, and can help feed some of the cancers that are, evidently killing our Black women far younger than they need to be, dying. Okay. And a plant-based diet is not only a preventative measure, and it can help prevent some of these, reproductive cancers that are spreading in our Black woman community, but they can also just help for an overall healthy lifestyle and well-being. And that means that we need to definitely be shifting to a more plant-based diet, not only for preventative measures for our physical selves, but it is a path of healing. It is a path of healing and overcoming some of the sexual trauma, the sexual abuse, and the sexual manipulation that many of us have been subjected to. So 1 in 4 women are reported to have been subjected to some form of sexual abuse, whether it's rape or it's molestation as a young child. 1 in 4, 25% of our sisters out here, 25% of our sisters out here are victims of sexual assault. And we have got to heal ourselves, because to be honest with you, no one else is going to truly do it for us other than our Black sisters and our Black brothers that are here to build up Black families. And one of the ways that we can start to heal ourselves from some of this sexual trauma and to move forward into putting ourselves in different positions. Hell no, I am not blaming the victim here. However, some of us are thrusted into situations where we are subjected to predators, and we are subjected to unhealthy environments. And this discussion, is going to be about how we can not only heal ourselves from the past trauma, but how we can navigate our lives in such a way to distance ourselves from toxic and negative people who are out to harm us. So a plant-based diet, and I mean, especially for our female reproductive systems, some of the things that I consider, and this is things that I eat too, I'm not just going to rap to you and I eat it. Of course, leafy greens, collard greens, kale, various types of foods that are high in iron, since, we do menstruate and, we need higher amounts of iron in our diet. Some women take iron pills. Personally, I just do blackstrap molasses as a high form of an iron intake, because many women are anemic. So having a higher iron intake is always going to be helpful as for Black women. For our healthy reproductive systems. So, but a plant-based diet, an all-around wholesome plant-based diet, of course, that includes those high iron foods, but also includes plant-based foods like whole grains, plant-based proteins, and not just like soy. We'll get into a discussion about soy in another episode, because that's like some science, But, consuming a healthy plant-based diet, of course, that's high in water, that's high in exercise, high in this can consist of a variety of, nuts, beans, and seeds, legumes, like I said, leafy greens, fruits, stone fruits, of course, seeded fruits, grains like lentils, amaranth. I mean, a wholesome plant-based diet can work towards preventing some of these reproductive cancers that our Black women are suffering from. But it also acts as a way of healing past wounds, as well as almost like a rewiring of our minds. It's almost a rewiring of how we think and how we process, to avoid putting ourselves with toxic people who are not in our best interest. And I know many of you are thinking, like, what is that going to do? What is just eating some fruit and some vegetables going to do? And, when I first went vegan, a little story time on, my reproductive journey, if you will. I was a meat eater, as many of us were and currently are. And I menstruated for about 5 to 6 days, very painful periods, not debilitating, but painful periods, uncomfortable menstruations. So when I went vegan about 8 years ago, my cycle went from about 6 days to about 4 days. And as I continue the vegan lifestyle, I've been vegan for 8 going on 9 years, so I can even attest to like 2 months ago, about 3 to 4 days, still some uncomfortability, but nothing like when I was, eating meat and menstruating. So because your body, the part of the menstruation cycle is your body getting rid of toxins. You're detoxifying yourself. That is a form of detoxification for women. So when you are consuming toxins, you're forcing your body to have to get rid of those toxins. And women have you have many ways of detoxifying, but of course, urination, defecation, sweating, and for women, it's menstruation. So when you're over consuming toxins, you're overtaxing this system, your reproductive system, to have to get rid of those toxins. And that can result in heavier periods, more cramping, more discomfort, and it can even lead to like endometriosis and, having just severe debilitating menstruation cycles and debilitating periods and heavy bleeding that may require hospitalization and even, prescription drugs. So when I went vegan, over the course of, I'll say this 8-year journey, my periods have gone down. I am not cramping like nothing. I mean, I might be a little like aggravated and irritated and maybe a little like uncomfortable, but absolutely nothing like what I was experiencing. And some of our Black women who were eating meat and have gone to a vegan diet have attested to having shorter periods, lighter periods, and having far less pain because you're not consuming as many toxins. So you're not overtaxing your reproductive system to have to excavate these toxins. And so I've been going raw vegan for about a month now. And part of the reason why I wanted to have this discussion was I just got off my period, which is astonishing because, as I said before, when I was eating meat, it was 6 days. When I was vegan, still eating a lot of salt and, consuming faux meat and stuff like that. But yeah, about 4 days, 5 days, far less pain. And just getting off my period. My period lasted 2 days. My period was 2 days. And I was like, I hope everything okay now. It is. Maybe like 3 days. And the third day didn't even really count because, 3 days. And that's since being on a mostly raw diet. So I have been consuming a lot of fruits and vegetables. And I'll even kind of break down for you how I prepare for my period. So my period was coming on a little late and I was like, I knew, I was like, I just want this thing to hurry up. So some of the foods that I consume before, during, and after my period is hibiscus tea, elderberries, and these are immune boosting herbs. Dried hibiscus flower and dried elderberries. They're immune boosting. So they help, encourage your blood circulation and help encourage your production of white blood cells. So, or especially the elderberries. But the hibiscus is really good at increasing your circulation and, increasing your likelihood to start bleeding. So before my period, I'll consume, 2 or 3 cups of hibiscus and elderberry. I'll also put rose in it. Rose is an all-around female herb. It's an all-around female herb. It is for everything. It's for skin, hair, nails, and it also encourages a healthy menstruation cycle. Some of the foods that I eat, I'll do beets. So, I'm eating mostly red and purple foods. We'll get into color foods in another segment because that's a whole nother 30-minute video too. But yes, I'm eating beets. I'm eating, I do prickly pear, like pink prickly pear. Say that 7 times in a row. I'll also do, pomegranate juice, and I'll also consume, ginger. Oh yeah, ginger. So those are some foods and some herbs that I drink and try to consume before and during my cycle. And then of course after my cycle, I'll still be drinking some of the teas just to make sure everything is getting flushed out. So that's kind of like my rundown. But all that to say that, since going raw vegan, and since going raw vegan, I've been eating a lot more, not just beets and, consuming more of those herbs that I was telling you about. But I just be eating more fruit, period. Mango, papaya, pineapple. Just fruits, period. And my period lasted through 2 or 3 days. I had very minimal cramping, very minimal discomfort and uncomfortability. And yeah, I'm like off my period, which was like astonishing because my cycle has always been, between like all the way up to 7 days at a point in time. So yes, that's kind of just like my rundown on what I do. I'll probably make another video, maybe like a part 2, a little bit more on how I manage my cycle and the progression of my cycle. But I just kind of wanted to give you guys an idea of how my cycle goes, and to hopefully inspire you to start incorporating some more of these foods into your diet. And I can say again, I'll have to make a part 2 to this. I'll have to make a part 2 because like there's just so much to talk about. But these foods have really acted as a source of healing for me too. It isn't just helping me have healthier cycles and menstruation cycles, but it's also just been such a healing experience for me and helping me balance not only my irritability during my cycle, but just healing, period. Just healing, period. Healing from past encounters with other people, healing from physically consuming toxins, and helping to cleanse out those toxins. And no wonder why my period was only 2 or 3 days, because I'm going to keep it real. I haven't been consuming a lot of toxins. So, therefore, I still have my cycle, but, I wasn't overtaxing this form of detoxification by over-toxifying myself with foods such as meat, such as dairy, such as a high salt, high sugar diet. Cause your body's you're forcing your body to have to move that somewhere. And in women, one of the ways that we move it is through our menstruation cycle. So I am going to make a part 2 to this video. I didn't even know I was going to make a part 2. I thought it was just going to be a one and done, but there's so much to discuss. And maybe I will in the part 2, we're going to definitely tackle more on the type of foods that you can be consuming, to help, have more comfortable periods, to have shorter periods, and to have lighter periods. But I just want to leave everybody off with, these are just ways to gain more control over your womanhood, over the ownership of your identity and your existence. We do not have to keep over relying on. Now, this isn't to say that don't go to the doctor. All right. Disclaimer. Okay. Don't not go to the doctor. If you're having an emergency and it's getting real, go to the hospital. Go to the hospital. However, please make a proactive measure to seek out Black female health practitioners. And I say health practitioners because there's more than just doctors out there. Seek out Black female dietitians, seek out Black herbalists, and especially seek out Black spiritual healers, because they will also be able to guide you in your healing and your preventative measures by tying in some of the spiritual trauma that you may be trying to detoxify yourself of. So seek out alternative and widen your option of healthcare practitioners in addition to just medical doctors. And of course, I just want to leave you guys off with, take more control of your health. It is a process, and it's not, every woman is different. Every woman's body is different, but by incorporating a diet, and I'm not gonna even say a diet, I'm gonna call it a lifestyle. If I've been calling it a diet, I apologize. By incorporating a lifestyle that can help prevent some of the reproductive issues that end up killing a lot of our Black women, and by incorporating, not only foods, but healing herbs that can help heal us of past sexual trauma and encourage a healthy reproductive system that not only works to just prevent certain cancers and certain diseases, but actually works to better our womanhood as a whole. I really encourage all of my listeners, male or female, if you are a male and you have a woman in your life that you care about, please send her this podcast, and just, pass the information on to her that we as women have to be, especially Black women, have to be taking more ownership over our health and really ridding ourselves of the over reliance on systems that inherently are just not in our best interest. So thank you so much, so much. I'm so grateful for all of my listeners and supporters who have been supporting and listening to this podcast. I hope you enjoyed this episode. There is going to be a part 2 since, we realized together that, this discussion deserves a part 2. So please stay tuned for a part 2 of this discussion. Of course, subscribe to the channel, like and comment your ideas and thoughts below. And yes, please check out the description below for ways to support the podcast. As I mentioned, I'm really trying to get some new equipment so that I can start producing more higher quality sounds and videos for you guys. So please check out my description to check out my GoFundMe page as well as my PayPal account. And if you are a Black woman and you are interested in learning more about plant-based foods and how you can take more control over your body, I offer vegan consultations, and the first consultation is always free. So if you are interested in communicating with me and connecting with me, and of course getting your first free consultation, you can contact me. You can find my email in the description below, or you can contact me at Khadidra Holmes, which is KADEDRAHOLMES @gmail.com, and we can set something up for you quick, fast, and in a hurry. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you